And happy Tuesday, everyone. My name is meteorologist Heather Kane, and it's time for our daily hail forecast, sponsored as always by C3 Group, Merlin Law Group, American Contractors Show, as well as Atlas Roofing. Thank you guys for sponsoring our videos. So let's get right into our weather headlines. We do have a few areas that we're watching for some marginally severe weather today in terms of wind. One's in the Great Lakes and the other is down in parts of the south. So we'll get into that in just a moment. And then getting into tomorrow, Florida will once again see a chance for some severe weather, including some hail, and then we could also possibly see another area in parts of Texas for some hail as well. And then as we get into the next few days, when will it warm up, you guys? We'll talk about that as well, because it is chilly across most of the U.S. So here are yesterday's storm reports. You can see it really wasn't that crazy of a day. Thankfully, we just saw a few hail reports as well as a few tornadoes and a few wind reports as well across northern Louisiana and parts of Mississippi, and some scattered reporting in Georgia as well. So zooming on in just to the west of Jackson, we did see a few tornadoes, and again near the Louisiana-Mississippi border we saw some isolated hail as well. So again, not too crazy of a day, thankfully, as it could have been much worse. So yeah, let's take a look at our current conditions across the U.S. That same system that brought some severe weather to the south yesterday in parts of the central and southern plains the day before, moving off to the east, and we have some heavy rain basically from Michigan all the way down to Florida. So let's zoom on in here closer to the Great Lakes region, where we will see the potential for some marginally severe weather this afternoon and evening. You can see some scattered showers across parts of western Michigan, as well as getting into parts of Illinois and Wisconsin. Snow falling on the back end of this system where it's colder. Minneapolis, you're getting snowed on right now. And then that rain stretches eastward from Buffalo down to Pittsburgh, all the way down to basically the Florida Panhandle. And speaking of the Florida Panhandle, we do have some stronger storms pushing their way to the east, starting to dry out a little bit in Montgomery, but parts of the Florida Panhandle, we're going to be watching you guys for the potential for severe weather later on this afternoon and evening. So zooming on out, I mentioned it's cold, and I wasn't lying. It is cold for most of us across much of the U.S., basically west of Michigan all the way to the west coast. It is cold. It is only 29, 25 in Minneapolis. At least I got the 20s part right. Warmer in Fort Wayne, though, where it's 59. That cold front hasn't made its way on through yet. 60s down in Atlanta and 80 down in Miami. And again, a lot colder as you get behind this storm system. And not only is it cold, it is also pretty dry. Those dew points are not very high. So Wichita only with a 20-degree dew point. Not much better as you go further south, and Dallas will only have a 30-degree dew point. That moisture is pretty much just staying right along that Gulf Coast. New Orleans has a 57-degree dew point. A 66-degree dew point is present right now in Miami. And in terms of being colder, we are anywhere from 10 to 20, even a bit more than that, below average for what we should be seeing in this time of the year across most of the U.S. Again, basically west of Illinois. You can see all of these blues and purples on the map. We are very below average. A little bit above average, though, as we go into the Great Lakes, into the northeast, down to south. That will be changing as we get into the next 24 hours as this system pushes off to the east, and that cold front brings in that cold air behind it. And in terms of our dew points right now, we are dry, but we still, of course, have that moisture in the southeastern part of the U.S. and even reaching up into the Great Lakes region. It's not a whole lot, but there's some and it should be at least enough to get us some isolated severe weather as we get into this afternoon, evening, getting into the overnight hours and getting into tomorrow. That moisture just sticks around down in the southeast, Florida, parts of Georgia, up into the Carolinas. You guys will continue to see that moisture, and we could see the potential for severe weather again there tomorrow. And then as we get into tomorrow afternoon, you can also see some moisture return, at least trying to, in parts of Texas. So we'll be watching central Texas for the possibility of some marginally severe weather there as we get into tomorrow. And you can see some greens trying to show up here. So we'll get into more details on what we're thinking about tomorrow in just a moment. But yeah, that moisture just sticks around here along the eastern coast, trying to push back up here in Texas. So we'll see if that's enough for development tomorrow. And in terms of our instability, so this is basically right now we have a little bit of instability here in the Great Lakes region from parts of Michigan all the way down to northern Kentucky. And as we get into the afternoon, this is at 4 p.m. Central, so 5 p.m. Eastern, not a whole lot of instability. So there may be a storm or two. I'm not expecting anything too crazy in terms of a lot of severe weather, as that instability there's just not a whole lot of it. But we will keep an eye on everything for you, as always, here at Hail Trace. But then as we get into tomorrow, this is at noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern. You can see those values of CAPE, or that instability, that fuel that's needed for storms to develop and keep on going, start to increase a bit here from South Carolina, southeastern Georgia down into Florida. And then you can also see another area starting to develop here in parts of central Texas. And then see those greens starting to increase here, including Dallas. We will be watching you guys as we get into tomorrow. This is at 5 p.m. Central and then 6 p.m. Eastern here along the eastern coast. As we get into the evening and into the overnight hours, you can see those values in Texas drop off. Still some instability in Florida. So we'll basically keep an eye on you guys, especially as we get into the next few days. So here is our future radar. This is stopping at 12:30 Central, so basically within the next few minutes. Storms are expected to fire within the next, half hour to hour or so as we look into western Michigan. As we get into the afternoon, so this is 4 p.m. Eastern time, a line of storms is expected to develop along and ahead of that cold front. So you can see with that linear structure, we're expecting wind to be the main threat today. I don't think there's going to be anything in terms of hail today in the Great Lakes region. So as we get into later on in the evening, this is at 11 Eastern time, Cleveland, we'll see if there is enough oomph left in this system to get some gusty winds out of this for you guys. As you can see, that line starting to lose its intensity as we go later into the evening and into the overnight hours. Just a few leftover showers will be here in parts of the northeast, in parts of Pennsylvania at least. And then getting down into the south, some more showers and storms are expected to fire as we get into this afternoon. Again, wind will be the main risk for these storms today. This is at 6 p.m. Eastern. Again, along and ahead of that cold front, those showers and storms will continue to push off to the east and get into eastern Florida as we'll get into later on tonight. And then as we get into the overnight hours, we could see some more storms fire up. And then just west of Jacksonville, this is at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. So starting off the day potentially noisy tomorrow in parts of the Florida Panhandle. So again, I mentioned hail. Not really expecting a whole lot of that today, if anything. So it's just a wind forecast for today. So there are two areas that we'll be watching for some gusty winds. Up to 60 mile per hour wind gusts are possible from most of lower Michigan, Lansing to Detroit, all the way down to Indianapolis and Dayton, Columbus, Ohio, even parts of northern Kentucky, and then another area down in parts of the Florida Panhandle, as well as southern Alabama and Georgia, so Tallahassee, as well as Mobile. Same deal, up to 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts are possible with any storms there. Now getting into tomorrow, we're going to jump to Texas first. I think most of the day should be quiet across central Texas, but we're going to be watching Dallas all the way down to parts of the Austin area for some isolated storm development. So this is stopping at 5 p.m. Central. You can see a few storms trying to fire up here with this particular model. And then as we get into later on in the evening, you can see some more storms here firing up in Texas. And I keep saying Nebraska in terms of severe weather today and tomorrow will be fine. No severe weather expected there. So getting into the rest of tomorrow afternoon and evening, those storms will continue to push off and then dissipate as we lose that instability in the heating of the day. So something to keep an eye on, and if you're in the DFW area down to the Austin region, just something to keep in mind. And then getting into tomorrow for Florida, that line of storms will continue to push off to the east. Jacksonville, we could see some storms across your region. A few rounds of it will be possible as we get through the morning, and then through the afternoon you can see some more redevelopment here and even some isolated cells. So tomorrow afternoon we could see some hail from these. So yes, some hail with this system possibly finally in parts of Florida. And getting into the rest of tomorrow evening, that activity will push off the coast for the most part, because then as we get into the overnight hours on Wednesday into Thursday morning, another round of storms may fire here along that front, as it looks like it may try to stall out here in parts of the Florida Panhandle. So that's why we're continuing to see those multiple rounds of showers and storms as we get through today, as well as into tomorrow and into the beginning of our Thursday. So yes, we do have a hail forecast for tomorrow. Again, 2 areas. The first area is here from the Dallas-Fort Worth area all the way down to Austin. I'm keeping hail sizes low for now. It looks like it's just going to be a small risk, only lasting a few hours. We'll see what this little disturbance does. And then as we get into Florida, again, Jacksonville, you guys can see $1.25 to $1.5 size hail if those storms can stay by themselves. So this is for tomorrow. Now, in terms of wind, same 2 areas, basically Dallas, Fort Worth, all the way down to the Austin area, up to 60-mile-per-hour gusts are possible there. And then the same deal for parts of the Florida Panhandle and maybe as far south as parts of central Florida. Jacksonville is the main city for that risk. So getting into the next few days, taking a look at our jet stream, you can see a little bit of a wiggle here getting into tomorrow. As we get into tomorrow afternoon, you can see a little bit better, just a little short wave here, nothing too substantial, which is why I'm keeping the hail sizes so low for tomorrow. That main system that is giving us that severe weather possibly today and getting into tomorrow starts to push off to the east a bit, but you can see it's still trying to hang around a bit as we get into Thursday as well. So we'll keep an eye on Florida for Thursday. And then we start to see that ridging taking over in the middle of the country. So if you don't like this cold weather, don't worry, it's not going to last for a long time. It's going to last for a day or two. And then with that ridging, we're going to start warming up. But then you can see that next trough starting to push in very slowly from the Pacific and making its way into the middle of, or into the western part of the country, I should say. For Friday, getting into our weekend, we'll continue to warm up. At this time, there isn't really anything to look out for in terms of severe weather. That main system, this is on Easter Sunday at noon. This is the next system that we'll be watching as we get into last week. Then finally, our temperatures, I told you it's going to start warming up as we get into basically tomorrow. You can see those temperatures starting to warm up back into the 50s and into the 60s in the south. And then as we get into Thursday, they start to push even further north. And then getting into Friday, the Great Lakes will start to join the party on getting into the lower 50s, getting into the 70s by Friday, and then getting into our weekend, 80 here possibly in Oklahoma City here on Saturday, more 70s and 80s in the south, and Chicago's possibly getting into the 60s, and then getting into our Easter Sunday, that warm weather will be taking over once again in the southern half of the U.S. So it'll be a little bit chilly in the north, but if you're basically from Nebraska south, we should start to warm up as we get into the next day or two. And in terms of precipitation, I mentioned, getting into the next, few days after we get through, tomorrow, not a whole lot. Some moisture here across the northern part of the U.S., but in terms of severe weather, we should be quiet for the most part after we get through today, and really nothing to watch until that next big system makes its way into the U.S. So that's all I have for you today. Make sure you follow us on Twitter or X, whatever the heck you want to call it. I guess it's really called X. I still call it Twitter. I don't know. Anyway, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, as well as our TikTok page. Make sure you hit see first on our Facebook page so you don't miss any of our videos. And then if you have any questions or concerns, you can call us at 855-334-4245. You can email us at info@hailtrace.com. Check out our website at www.hailtrace.com. And then if you want to do a demo, learn more about us and our products, you can scan that QR code above, and that will get you set up with a demo. But that is all I have for you now. My name is meteorologist Heather Kay. I hope you all have a great rest of your Tuesday.